Presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. I'm Dave Lochran. That's Adam Scher and Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. 10-game slate today. An interesting one, nonetheless. Hey, Adam, Max Scherzer, Mad Max, planning on pitching with a broken nose and a black eye, huh? Which he did to himself during batting practice on a foul bunt.
Yeah, bunted the ball off his face. Probably the least surprising news of the day was that he doesn't care that he has a broken nose and he's going to pitch anyway.
You can't tell me you're not looking forward to seeing him out on the mound like that, though.
I really hope he wears some kind of like mask or something and just looks even more intimidating than usual.
Yeah, somebody had tweeted at me today, if he wore a Jason mask out there, it would be phenomenal. Yeah. Complete game shutout at the least. What's up, Alex?
What's up, man? Dude, I feel like we got to discuss the narratives involved in this Max Scherzer broken nose game, but I guess we got to wait till that game comes up.
No, we don't. What's the narrative?
I don't know, man. That's what I was going to ask you guys.
I mean,
how do guys do with a broken nose?
What'd you say?
I said, how do guys do with a broken nose in the past?
I feel like we're in uncharted waters. Is it going to affect him, or his eyes going to start tearing up? I have no idea. We'll get there.
I did see Dave Martinez, the Nats manager, talk about it during the press conference. He said that Scherzer wasn't having trouble breathing, so I guess that's good.
Oh, good. Wonderful.
Well, baseball being such an aerobic activity, that makes a big difference.
Right.
Yeah. Let's hope he doesn't have blurry vision either. All right, let's jump into it, boys. Pittsburgh and Detroit. Alex, we'll go to you first to kick this one off. Battle of the pitchers coming off the IL. Trevor Williams hasn't pitched in a month, actually 33 days to be exact. Jordan Zimmerman hasn't pitched since April 25th. Both of them activated. Zimmerman was dealing with an elbow injury, a side injury for Trevor Williams. Let's start with Trevor Williams here. Really not a terrible spot. Pretty average strikeout pitcher, nothing spectacular, but decent numbers this season, and he's facing a righty-heavy, K-heavy Detroit team. What are your thoughts here? It's a good park for Williams. Are you willing to get here? It's particularly on DraftKings at 7,300.
So I saw that he had a side injury, I guess like an oblique, and he made one minor league start as a rehab start, it looks like. So I'm not expecting him to be a full strength today as far as pitch count, unless you guys have seen something else.
71 pitches in that rehab start, so I'm assuming we get like mid-80s.
Yeah, I was honestly feeling pretty comfortable giving him around 90, to be honest.
Okay.
And here's why I say that, because if he only made one start and it started at 71 and he didn't have to ramp it up from like 50 to 60. Usually, if you're allowed to come out in one outing and throw 70-plus pitches, it doesn't seem like there's that much concern. That's just my opinion, but from what we've seen, one start, 71 pitches on your first go-ahead, doesn't seem like that they're that worried.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think this Trevor Williams isn't a guy who really has great command, I guess, because he doesn't get like deep in the games. It doesn't. So I think that. With a little bit of an injury concern, he's not gonna be a great pick. I mean, the matchup though is amazing. The Tigers lineup have striking out more than 10% higher than average. But Trevor Williams on the year has 19% Ks. He's only gotten 22 batters per game, and if it's down just a little bit, that's gonna really make me not super interested in going to him.
What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I have some interest just because of the matchup and the price point on the two pitcher sites. Certainly not interested on FanDuel where you only roster the one. But I agree with Alex. I don't expect him to be limited, but I also don't expect them to, suddenly push him to go, like 105 pitches or something like that. So pretty mediocre strikeout stuff. Questions about exactly how deep he'll go into the game, but a matchup with Detroit that does give him upside. He's not a bad pitcher as far as limiting production, particularly, really gets both sides of the plate. 150 ISO to righties, 107 to lefties. 21.5% strikeout percentage against righties this year is about 6 points higher than against lefties, and there's 6 righties in the Detroit lineup. So overall, I think it's a pretty decent spot, and I'll be getting to some Williams, but I don't expect him to be like a core pitcher for me.
Yeah, I think I I think I probably like him a little bit more than, well, definitely more than Alex. I guess the same level as you, Adam. It's not that I'm in love with Williams by any stretch, but it is a really good park. It is a really good matchup. And on a night where like Jon Lester is looking like he's going to be ultra chalk, I'm not super concerned about maybe getting away from Jon Lester a little bit. So, yeah. You want to add anything to the pitching matchup here before we get to bats?
Not to the pitching matchup, no.
All right. Well, let's get. I'll stay with you then, Adam. Jordan Zimmerman making a return after 2 months being out. What are you doing with Pittsburgh bats? Some interesting spots here. Some of their salaries have come down a bit. It's not a great park, of course, but he's not a great righty.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Pittsburgh is in an appealing spot. Zimmerman's not great. The Tigers' bullpen isn't great. There's, just opportunities for him to score throughout the game, and I think that's why we see almost a 5.5 implied run total here. If you look at the top stack tool on the Awesemo.com site, you see that the Pirates have one of the highest probabilities of being the top scoring stack, but also one of the highest aggregate ownership percentages. So I think maybe they come in a little bit overowned, but still a pretty nice spot there, especially, no Gregory Polanco in the lineup is disappointing, but you do get a very, very affordable Corey Dickerson batting sixth. I really like that a lot. Colin Moran's a reasonable play. Josh Bell is at one of the cheaper price points that we've seen him at in a while. So I certainly think that, Pittsburgh is in a good spot. I'll have some Pittsburgh. I just think that there are some other stacks that maybe come in a little bit lower owned than they should compared to where Pittsburgh comes in.
Yeah, no question. And if they weren't as cheap as they were, if a lot of these prices hadn't come down, you probably wouldn't see so much ownership. But it is a pretty favorable spot, Alex.
Absolutely. I mean, Zimmerman, definitely not a great pitcher. Doesn't really get a lot of strikeouts, and his xFIP in his limited starts this year has been over 5. This is really site specific, I think, because on DraftKings, the Pittsburgh team ownership is 10%, but on FanDuel, it is only. It looks like it's considerably lower. So I think that means I'd be more interested in FanDuel, even though they're priced a little bit higher.
Okay. Do you guys have any interest in Tiger bats here? Like, I know Goodrum, shortstop eligible now, is pretty cheap. Kristen Stewart. There are some cheap bats, none of them particularly good, but some are cheap. Any interest for either of you guys in any Detroit hitters?
Not really. It's kind of the same as always. If I got there, it would be Castellanos or Kristen Stewart. They're both cheaper than their power numbers suggest they should be. But also with 19 other offenses on the slate, I think that there are some better spots, even if you're looking for value.
Okay, I do not disagree. All right, let's go to Philly and Washington, Adam. Max Scherzer, like we said, broken nose, black eye, putting in the work. He doesn't care. He's facing a Philadelphia Phillies team that we do have the lineup for the second game. Segura, Harper, Kingery, Hoskins, Bruce. Finally got that Kingery home run I've been waiting for, by the way. Caesar, Brad Miller. That's right. Oh, Bad Miller. Andrew Knapp, because Realmuto is not starting back-to-back, especially after the recent injury. And Arrieta. I mean, my God, Adam, I know that we like seeing more righties in a lineup for Scherzer. Like, it definitely benefits him, and the more righty-heavy they are, the better it looks. But the bottom of this lineup being Cesar Hernandez, Brad Miller, Andrew Knapp, and Jake Arrieta isn't exactly pushing me far away from Scherzer either.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously prefer the righties. This year he struck out 39% of righties compared to 26.7% of lefties, but he's still a good pitcher against lefties. 311 expected WOBA, 143 ISO. That 26.7% strikeout percentage still isn't bad. And if you go back to last season, it's 30.1%. So I'm still going to side with Scherzer here against a bunch of lefties that aren't very good. Harper and Bruce, really the only two power lefties in this lineup, and Harper's strikeouts have gone through the roof this season. So I think that it's still a really good spot for Scherzer. In tournaments, you always can make a case for saving some money at pitcher, but I do really like Scherzer, and I think there are enough good value bats on the slate where it's not that difficult to get to him either.
So what's the narrative, Alex? Max Scherzer busted up, took a ball off the nose, broke his shit up, and here he is, expected to pitch against the Phillies less than 24 hours later?
I think the narrative. I mean, the superstars when they have these games, like the Jordan flu game, it's just like having a little bit more motivation to go out there and make this a special day, like because he has that broken nose. Just gives a little bit more meaning to what he goes out and does today. I think he'll be trying just a little bit harder.
Mask or no mask?
Man, that's gonna be the difference. If he shows up with a Friday the 13th mask, man, he's gonna go out and get like 15 strikeouts.
Be incredible. The thing is, they got to like fit those things. They're not going to go to the local Halloween store. You know what I mean? Like, you remember when when Joel Embiid took the what was it, off Markelle Fultz's shoulder or something? They had to fit those masks and go through a process of getting him to him. So I don't know. Alex, you think there will be anything on his face other than dry blood?
This is really going outside my expertise, but I'd have to guess that a tough guy like Max, he's not going to want to wear a mask on his face.
If I gave you plus 500, no mask, or sorry, minus 500, no mask, would you bet that?
I think I would, because in basketball, I mean, it's a contact sport, so you got to protect the nose. But in baseball, like, the odds of him being shot in the nose are pretty low. So
yeah, I would definitely bet that. Watch, he takes a line drive off the
right.
head.
Well, I mean,
they asked Dave Martinez if he was wearing a mask. He said, "I don't know. I saw him today, and all he was wearing was a black eye."
Oh, okay. So wait, he didn't say no.
He didn't really answer it other than to say that he had a black eye.
All right, interesting. Jake Arrieta was set to pitch 2 straight days, Adam. Postponements factored that out, and Zach Eflin pitched earlier today. Like, we don't even – if you've watched the show yesterday or Monday, we don't even need to talk about Arrieta. I'll let you do a brief recap on the exact same situation we've talked about for 3 days now that is not once played out.
Yeah, so the take hasn't changed. I really like the lefties here. Juan Soto is still really cheap. Matt Adams is still really cheap. And then also, speed guys, Trey Turner and Victor Robles. Robles in particular, I think, is a really interesting tournament play. He's batting 8th. He's cheap. He's not going to have ownership because he's batting 8th. But he does have power. He does have speed. And he's still hitting in this, Nats lineup that is in a pretty decent spot. So priority for me going to Soto and Adams. But there's certainly merit to just getting the full Nats stacks here.
How about you, Alex?
I think that the team total isn't as high as it had been the past few games, so I'm not over the moon on the Nats. I guess the weather looks like it's hot. Humidity is about average, so I think just the weather isn't quite as good as it had been. But I see some really good values on Washington's team, especially the guys with the positive platoon split. And I think you can definitely make a nice stack there.
Any interest, I have to ask, in Philly bats?
I mean, you could go for... There's a couple guys like Harper, like maybe you can get him on DraftKings. I think that could be a nice play because no one's going to be on the stack, and maybe he hits some home runs.
All right. Sounds good to me. Adam, you want to add anything on this game?
Nope.
All right. We move on to Toronto against the Angels. So, Adam, I was looking into Heaney today, and, last start was pretty underwhelming. He went 5 one-run innings and only allowed 2 hits, but he only struck 2 batters out. And if you noticed, he got really no swings outside of the zone, which is what he was doing a lot of through his first 3 starts. And a lot of that is because they chased the hell out of that curveball that just breaks away from the zone. But then I said, all right, well, let's look over a few other things. And you come to find that against curveballs this season, just if you're using FanGraphs pitch values, not only are the Blue Jays bad, but they're nearly twice as bad as the second worst team in the league. That's how bad they've been against the opposing curveball this season. They also have the 6th highest K rate against lefties. They're bottom 5 in WOBA and WRC plus. The Rays were disciplined in that start. They didn't swing at bad pitches. I don't know if that's going to be the case with the Toronto Blue Jays today.
Yeah, I have interest in both sides of this game. I think that it's a good spot for Heaney. He's still reasonably priced. Toronto's active roster has the 5th highest strikeout percentage against lefties since the start of last season at 24.6%. Below average WRC plus, 92, 307 WOBA. So all that's good. And sets up well for Heaney. On the other hand, though, you also have some really cheap power for Toronto, in particular Vlad Guerrero, who's 3,600 on DraftKings. Randall Grichuk batting cleanup at 3,400. You have a essentially minimum priced catcher who's been terrible this year, but he's still a minimum priced catcher, and he's better than Jeff Mathis, who's the other option. So there's still bats here that I think are appealing. I think there's a good chance that I'll get to Heaney in somewhere around like 20% of my lineups, but then also be using Toronto one-offs in lineups that don't have Heaney.
All right. Hey, Alex, what about you here? Andrew Heaney and Toronto. I think Adam makes a good point that while Heaney's very interesting, and I honestly, I think I can't predict his run totals here, but I do expect his strikeout numbers to be a lot better in this specific matchup. But the Toronto bats continue to be really cheap. Vlad Guerrero's only getting cheaper, and most of these guys are coming in at a discount, a lot of the righties too. So feel free to cover all of this, including the Angel bats against Aaron Sanchez.
Yeah, I think I like Heaney, and I think you can make a nice stack out of Toronto. So I'm not really feeling strongly one way or the other. With Heaney on the year, 34% strikeouts, not a lot of stars, but he was a pretty good strikeout pitcher before. So I think there's a pretty good chance he gets some good strikeouts here. The Toronto matchup, I have striking out just about league average, so I'm not. He's not like jumping off the page at me, but the price tag isn't unreasonable. Sanchez, I'm not really interested in. Bad strikeout matchup versus Angels, but there are 3 guys. It's kind of site dependent, but Guerrero, as you mentioned, super underpriced, and then Grichuk and Biggio. Not Biggio. Danny Jansen. Danny Jansen at 2,100 on DraftKings and 7 on Yahoo. Definitely a good way to fill that catcher spot, batting 7th. As far as the Angels bats, they have the highest team total of the day, I believe, at 6.2. So obviously they're going to be a top stack. It's going to be all about figuring out how to manage that high ownership versus the projection.
Okay. Adam, where do you land on Angel bats here? They've been very popular lately, and for good reason. But now they face Sanchez, who I thought this guy could be good, and he continues to prove me wrong every 5 days.
Yeah, he's a pitcher that I don't understand why he's not better, but it's been years now of me thinking that this guy was going to turn it around and be a good pitcher, and it just has never really happened. He doesn't give up a ton of power, but he does walk guys, particularly lefties, doesn't strike out a lot of guys. So this sets up as a matchup where the Angels are going to be putting the ball in play a lot, as usual, but also potentially with a lot of guys on base due to walks from Sanchez. Getting Upton back gives them a little bit more power, in the middle of that lineup now. It's unfortunate that the 2 through 5 hitters are all outfielders. It makes it kind of tough to stack in that regard, but they do all have power, especially, of course, Ohtani, Trout, and Upton. So I think that overall, like, the Angels for me are a top 5 stack. I think that using them as a mini stack is another good way that I'll probably go, just, taking 2 or 3 out of the middle of that order. They will probably be popular, like Alex said, but with there being 20 offenses on the slate, I don't think it'll be that difficult to find ways to get to the Angels and then still have contrarian lineups somehow.
All right. Anything else in this one?
Not for me.
I think we pretty much covered it, Alex. Anything else?
Not that I can think of now.
All right. Well, we'll stay with you, Steven Matz, Max Fried, Mets and Atlanta Braves. You've got some decent totals in this game. The Braves continue to produce solid run totals here at SunTrust Park. And we talked about this at length yesterday. So many of their batters just keep getting better as the year goes on. They have a 5.5 run total here against Steven Matz. But look, he's an above average lefty. I take nothing away from the guy, but I also have a very difficult time ignoring the lineup that you're getting here: Ronald Acuna, Dansby Swanson, who's been a revelation this season, Freddie Freeman, Donaldson, Austin Riley, and then you have Albies, who is expensive but is so much better from the right side of the plate, batting sixth. You've got a righty in Flowers who hits lefties well, batting seventh. This is just such a potent and dangerous lineup. I know Steven Matz is cheap, but this matchup scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you have a tough team like Atlanta, especially, I mean, they have a 5.9 team total.
Oh, is it up to 5.9 now? Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Well, the team totals I'm going by are the ones that I post on the site. Just like a big thing a lot of team totals don't do is they don't account for the fact that more runs are scored on average than the over/under. So I adjust for that in my team totals. You can find them on the tools section of the website. So I think Atlanta is a really, really tough matchup for pitchers. Their strikeouts today in their lineup are a little bit easier to come by. But, I mean, when you take an average pitcher like Matz and you put him in a tough matchup, there's really not a ton of potential. On the other side, Fried, just an average pitcher as far as strikeouts. In an average matchup versus the Mets have a team total of 5.1, which is pretty high. But the price is low on DraftKings and FanDuel, so I think you can go with Fried on those. And on Yahoo, he's priced up a little bit more, so I'm probably not going to end up on him.
All right. Yeah, I mean, Adam, you've got Alex just mentioned both totals. If you're going by what we have on the site, as he mentioned, under the tools tab, it's under the lineup builder, right? You're talking about? Yeah, under MLB. 5.9 and 5.1. That's a lot of runs here with two pitchers on the mound that you wouldn't look at and say, oh, they're bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sets up as a really, really good spot for the Braves because when you think about Steven Matz and just what he does as a pitcher, he's got good strikeout stuff. He struck out about 25% of righties this year, but he still struggles with right-handed power and he struggles with holding runners. And you're facing an Atlanta team that does not strike out a lot. You know, most of this lineup has below average strikeout percentages, and they have nothing but right-handed power and a lot of speed. So you have Matz's two weaknesses and the team that can mitigate his one strength. So I think it's a really, really dangerous spot for Matz. I love Atlanta here. The top stack tool on the site has them at a lower projected ownership than their chances of being the top stack, which I like. And I think it makes sense because they are an expensive lineup. But they're also running out like the best possible lineup that they could. You know, no Nick Markakis in there. You have Ozzie Albies up to the 6th spot. Austin Riley batting 5th. You know, you mentioned Flowers. Even Culberson has, you know, a decent luck hitter here. It's just a really, really good spot for Atlanta, I think. And then on the other side, you know, Fried, I think Alex mentioned it being site specific. He's a good play on DraftKings to me at 6,100. The Mets, production-wise, have been average against left-handed pitching. They do strike out a bit, so it's not a bad spot there. There are a lot of righties here. Fried's strikeout numbers are down this year from previous seasons, but his walk percentage is also down. He's allowed only 3.9% of balls put in play to be barreled this year, which is a very good percentage. So he's still, you know, a pretty decent pitcher that does a good job of limiting production. So where he's really cheap on DraftKings, I like him. I don't think he's necessary on FanDuel. And then on Yahoo, he's $38, which is pretty unnecessary. So I'll get there on DraftKings. And as far as Mets bats go, Pete Alonso stands out. You know, tons of power there. Other than that, not getting to a whole lot of the Mets. But we do have them as another team that we have projected for a better chance of or a higher percentage chance of being the top stack than their ownership represents.
I don't want to pigeonhole you here, but when you look at some of the really expensive hitters on the Atlanta side, there are a good amount of them, right? Austin Riley, Acuna, Swanson, Albies, Freeman. These guys are all very expensive and all very appealing. Where do you rank them if you had to, just for someone, you know, say they're playing a few lineups, you can't work all of them into 150 because they're not playing them. Are you prioritizing anyone more than the other? Like obviously Acuna, of course, but then once you get to like Albies and Swanson and Riley and Donaldson being another one who is not too expensive, but he's up there. How do you rank these guys?
All right, so to put it in context, before the show, I crunched 150 DraftKings lineups, just naked 5-man stacks with my exposure cap. So I only have a couple hitters over 15%. So basically, assume 15% is like my cap in this crunch. Acuna's at like 13, Swanson's at 11, Donaldson's at 12, Flowers is at 12. So I would say that Acuna is my number one priority, followed by like Swanson and Donaldson, and then Flowers because of his position.
Okay, and Alex, how about you? I know you don't usually crunch until after the show, but just looking at this now, who are your top bats? Because I do think Atlanta is clearly a huge upside stack here against Mets, just given the power, as Adam mentioned, and he made a great point. The stolen base upside certainly comes into play against the guy that really struggles to hold runners.
Yeah, absolutely. The guys Adam mentioned for sure. One guy I'll throw some love is Charlie Culberson, batting 8th, the minimum on FanDuel and Yahoo. So, I mean, this guy has some power. He hasn't played a ton this year, but definitely not a bad GPP play, and the price is super good. And then I like Freeman because he's lefty-lefty. I think a lot of ownership will be off him, but still, he has the second highest projection of any batter on the team.
All right. Makes sense to me. Do you guys either want to spend a little bit of time here on the Mets? I know we spent a lot on the Braves. Anything to add on this Mets team against Max Fried?
Yeah, I think it's a good team to stack. I'm seeing a lot of fairly priced players, and I see the ownership is projected to be pretty low tonight. So I think that makes a good deal of sense to pay up for them. Adam,
anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Alex. They came in that initial crunch like between 5th and 10th, highest owned for me. Alonso in particular, I'm getting a lot of. But because of what our stack tool is saying right now, with them having really, really low ownership, I expect that I do get some of them just because that's something that I look for when I make my lineups.
Okay. That sounds good to me. Let's keep it going, boys. Game 5 of a 10-gamer. We're halfway through at 5:30. Would you look at that? We are precise. Lucas Giolito, Jon Lester, Alex. Lester is projecting to have some serious ownership on this slate. I get it. He is cheap. I was surprised to see the projected ownership on Yahoo where he's not as cheap, but we've got him with the newest up. What's the last update was a couple hours ago, but not long ago. 39% on DraftKings, highest priced pitcher and highest projected owned pitcher and highest projected owned player on DraftKings. Even on FanDuel, a one-pitcher site, on a day where you have Scherzer, Hill, Greinke against Colorado, and a few others that we've yet to name, Jon Lester is the highest projected owned pitcher at 28% and third highest owned player overall. And finally, on Yahoo, where he's 41, we've got him at 39%. Second highest owned pitcher behind Max Scherzer, third highest owned player overall. So there, we've set the table on Jon Lester here against the White Sox team that might not strike out against lefties as much as people assume.
The first thing I want to comment on is the weather here. The radar is looking really rough, just a ton of rain. Mostly light rain, but I'm pretty concerned that they won't have a window of good weather to play the game. And I'm not sure they're going to be motivated to play through rain because it is a Chicago matchup. And although the White Sox at Cubs game, there isn't another one scheduled this year. There's one that's Chicago at White Sox, but I feel like if they have a mutual day off, it won't be too inconvenient to pick a new date, since they don't have to travel for the game. And I'm thinking that I'll end up fading this. I mean, I won't really know until we get closer to game time. But if the game does go off, Jon Lester, it looks like he's in an amazing spot. I mean, the over-under of 7 is pretty low, and the White Sox only have a 3.5 team total. The lineup they're running out strikes out 10% more than average. Lester has a K rate of 23% this year, which is pretty good. So I think all the factors are aligning for him.
If I mean, I'm not a big Lester guy. I get it. Don't get me wrong. It makes sense. If there is no weather in terms of precipitation, winds are blowing in from left field at I think 13, 14 miles per hour, and it's going to be less than 60 degrees. So if there's no rain, it is good pitching conditions for Lester, Adam. But you know what? Let's get your take. You are one of the biggest Jon Lester fans that I know.
Oh man, I hate Jon Lester.
I know.
No, I mean slates like this are like a nightmare for me because outside of my personal biases against Jon Lester as a DFS pitcher, there's nothing to suggest he's not a good play. The price point's really good. The weather is great. You're talking about a White Sox team that is in the top 5 in strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching since last year, looking at their active roster. Everything's working in Lester's favor here. I mean, there's nothing to say that he doesn't give up a home run or two to someone like, Eloy Jimenez, but the price tag's just so cheap that it's a risk worth taking. If the weather cooperates, I'm going to have to just suck it up and roster Jon Lester.
Yeah, I bet you're hoping it doesn't.
I'm hoping that we get some kind of definitive answer before lock because everything I've done in the last week regarding weather has been wrong.
Yeah, I hear you. So you brought it back to last year on the active roster, which makes sense. I believe this year they're right in the middle of the league in K rate versus lefties.
Yeah, it's possible.
Either way, they're not very good. Low total. He's a big favorite at home. It makes sense. I don't love it, but it does. And Alex, you brought up some good points as well. The other side of this game has Lucas Giolito, who has just been a downright stud. Even against the Yankees, he holds them to 1 run on 4 hits. It was a solo shot, 6 innings, 6 Ks in a really difficult matchup. You saw what they did to Blake Snell today. He didn't get 2 outs. Finished with negative 14 fantasy points. What a disaster that was. But anyway, Adam, I'll go to you here. Just question. I don't see any way you can, even for contrarian purposes, maybe we're totally off here, but get to Giolito only because Scherzer against this Phillies lineup, Rich Hill against San Francisco. We'll get to Greinke, who I actually think is in a very good spot. Where do you stand on Giolito here against the Cubs? Barring
as good as I think he is, and the fact that I think that he is legitimately good, I don't think this is just like a flash in the pan. I can't get there here. Even if you strip the weather concerns out of it, the Cubs are in the middle of the pack in strikeout percentage. They're an above-average offense as far as production goes. And adding Scherzer to this slate, it's just, if you want to pay all the way up for a pitcher with a ton of upside, I think Scherzer's still better than Giolito, of course, and he's in a better strikeout spot. If you wanted a really good pitcher just in a good matchup, you can save a little bit of money and get Hill, who's in a mediocre strikeout matchup, but facing a much worse team than the Cubs. And if you're looking, to go cheaper at pitcher, you obviously can do that as well. So it's just a spot where, even if you're doing it to be contrarian, you still need so much to go right for it to really work out for you that I don't anticipate getting to Giolito today.
Alex, are you on an island here, or are you with us?
No, I'm with you guys. I think the price tag is just too high for his talent in the matchup.
What about hitters? Again, you already pointed out all of the weather concerns. They're legitimate. But let's say it goes off without a hitch. Do you like bats from this game?
I think I have tepid interest in the Cubs. There are a couple of guys that are particularly well priced. Baez and Contreras on Yahoo at $9 and $7, and then the first 4 batters on DraftKings. So I think you can make a stack that looks decent, but the weather obviously not good. The matchup versus Giolito not optimal. So I'd only go as a really contrarian play.
All right, Adam, anything to add on that?
I'm interested in the White Sox if this game goes, because even though Lester is a really good play, he's going to be really popular if the weather cooperates, and there is a lot of right-handed power in this lineup. Jimenez in particular, I absolutely love. I think Jose Abreu would be a good play as well. Tim Anderson's been better this year. I think it's if the wind were blowing out and or it were warmer, like I would really, really like the White Sox. As is, it's tough to really like them, but I still think that getting to some of their power bats as leverage against Lester is a pretty good way to go.
Okay. Hey, by the way, have you not checked out awesemo.com yet? Well, I don't know what you're doing wrong here, but I can tell you how to do it and get 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus membership or subscription. Just use the promo code Deeper Dive, all one word, Deeper Dive. Get half off your first month at awesemo.com. That'll give you the ownership projections for not just baseball, but any sport that's active. Player projections, same thing goes, not just baseball, but all of them. Alex Baker, Awesemo, you're looking at him in the middle of the screen. He uses them every day. He developed them. He's the one that maintains them, and he gives them to us and to you to use. The MLB top stacks tool, which is phenomenal. Adam was just talking about it a minute ago. The lineup builder. I've actually, Adam, come across stuff on the site like throughout this season. I know you're the same way. Whereas I go, wait, I didn't even know this was there, and now I use it every day. I'm serious about that too.
Yeah, I mean, the top stack tool is the number one example of that.
I know. I mentioned it one day on the show, and I noticed you mentioned it the next day.
Yeah.
And that was the first day I had found it, to be honest with you. But it's great. I had no idea, and that's that just goes to show you how much good stuff and tools we have at Awesemo. Use the promo code Deeper Dive. Alex, since you're the one developing most of this, is there anything else here that you want to talk about? Like, we have the Data Central now; it's in beta. There's so much.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, this is the stuff you need to win at the game today. And if you're not using the premium tools on the site, you're not taking advantage of the best data out there. So I think that if you want to be serious at DFS, it's a pretty mandatory thing. I mean, of course, we're giving you guys some of our takes on the show for free to get you hooked. But if you want to take that next step, you got to sign up for sure.
All right. Deeper Dive, all one word. Check it out. And you know what? If not, if you're not ready, you don't have the money yet, that's all right. You can come check us out here on YouTube, the Awesemo channel, every day of the week. And until you are ready, we've got you covered. But when you are, use the promo code Deeper Dive. All right. Let's keep it going here. Texas, Cleveland. Alex, we have Adam Plutko and Joe Palumbo, whose steamer actually has him striking out almost a batter per inning. He seems to be a pretty interesting lefty here. He's only thrown 4 innings above not AAA, but AA for his career. And now he's facing an Indians team that predictably has a very high total. I'm not necessarily sure what to make of Palumbo. Now, I'm not saying to roster the guy. Let's be clear. But I'm also not sure that he's as bad as Vegas and a lot of other people I've heard talk about him think he is. What are your thoughts on him?
I think he's going to be a guy that gets a lot of strikeouts, and for that reason, he's going to have a lot of fantasy value. A lot of times we see like strikeout percentage is not very highly correlated with how good a pitcher is. His xFIP in AA was 3.8, which is a good example of that. I mean, that projects him to be significantly worse than league average. But he's going to be a guy that can get you strikeouts. And let me check how many I have him for today. But the problem is Texas is just one of the worst parks to pitch in. And Cleveland, their strikeouts aren't really there. So I have him projected for only 4 strikeouts today. But definitely a guy who's on my radar for future starts.
Yeah, I have no interest in rostering Palumbo today whatsoever. But I was a little bit surprised when I looked at some of his numbers, thinking, like you said, he might not be a terrible option once he gets out of Globe Life here and there. But what about these Indian bats? We'll do Palumbo Indians and then Plutko Texas. Like Mercado is on DraftKings specifically. He's $5,000 now. Lindor and Santana are expensive. I believe Luplow's up to $4,600. This isn't the same, or 45. This isn't the same, and we can do site specificity as well. But on DraftKings, at least, this is not the same discount Indians team that it had been over the past week or so.
Yeah, I think the first thing I noticed when I loaded up Fantasy Cruncher today and Crunch is that I got a ton of Cleveland, I got a ton of Pittsburgh. These are definitely the optimizer plays. And I think the ownership's going to be there, especially with Kipnis and Ramirez. after last night. I mean, they had pretty good games, I think, and they're just priced super, super low, especially Ramirez on all three sites and Kipnis on DraftKings. So I think you can make some interesting game theory plays here where you stack up some of the more contrarian plays and avoid Kipnis or Ramirez. And once we get the final ownership updates, or once we, then I think we'll be able to start looking at the team and making those decisions.
All right, Adam, I'd love to get your take on Palumbo, fresh face in Major League Baseball.
He's someone that if his price tag stays down here, I anticipate rostering on slates that are not tonight. He does have strikeout stuff, like you said, and that's one of the major things I really care about in DFS. But Cleveland's active roster has the second lowest strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching since last year. Just not a lot of strikeouts in this lineup. Obviously, a really, really bad ballpark to pitch in. And there is some power here, too. You have Ramirez is a question mark as far as, if he's healthy or what's going on with him. But you also have Jordan Luplow with power. You have Lindor, who's a phenomenal hitter. Even Roberto Perez, only 100 at-bats or plate appearances against lefties since last year, but a 202 ISO. Has a little bit of pop for a catcher. Carlos Santana is a good hitter. It's just a really, really difficult spot. So I'm not looking to go to Palumbo. I am interested in the Indians. Like Alex said, I think a lot will come down to what their final ownership projections look like. One way that I think you can be contrarian if you are looking to get to this team is if you look at Texas's bullpen, they have three lefties in there. One of them is Drew Smiley, who isn't available. He threw 64 pitches yesterday. One of them, Brett Martin, pitched Monday and Tuesday, so he's probably not going to go today. And then the third one threw 32 pitches on Sunday, so he may or may not be available today. But the point just being, if Cleveland gets to Palumbo early, there's going to be probably a pretty steady stream of right-handed pitchers coming in after him. So you're not going to have the platoon disadvantage for very long if they can get to Palumbo early.
Right, and it's a good point. What are your numbers on the Rangers bullpen?
I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, they're bad though.
I don't have them right. I'm pulling them up right now. Last I looked, it was far from concerning. If your Indians bats here, let's just see relievers. XFIP this season, active roster, of course. For the Texas Rangers is all right, 12th, so not terrible. But they not a lot of strikeouts, and 1.53 home runs per nine is fourth most in the league. You talk about strikeouts being so important. Well, homers are pretty important too on the other side. So yeah, you might. I don't know who would come in. I don't know if you have any idea, if you've looked into that, but probably a good spot regardless. What about the other side, Adam? Adam Plutko and the Texas Rangers at Globe Life, where temperatures are approaching 95 degrees.
I love Texas here. I know on the stack tool right now we have them projected to be higher owned than they should, but I just absolutely love this spot. Adam Plutko is mediocre at best overall as a pitcher, but he's really struggled with lefties since coming up last season. He's thrown 815 pitches to lefties overall, a 13% strikeout percentage, 311 ISO, 398 WOBA allowed. And now he's facing a ton of left-handed power here in Texas. 4 righties in the lineup, but 2 of them, Forsythe and Fedorovich, are hitting 8 and 9. So you're just getting this string of left-handed power from 4 through 7. Shin-Soo Choo leading off has power as well. I really like the spot for Texas. How
about you, Alex?
Yeah, I think it's a great spot. On FanDuel, they're particularly well-priced. And on Yahoo, Delino just shields at 7 in the second hole. That's a cash game lock.
Okay. Yeah. What did you say Adam? The ownership looks like 10% on DraftKings, 9.7, third highest. 15% on FanDuel, the highest. This is just projected ownership, and highest on Yahoo as well. So they are going to be popular, but it's certainly a good spot. Let's talk about Boston and Minnesota. Alex, we'll go to you. Kyle Gibson, Eduardo Rodriguez, 2 good pitchers in dismal spots today.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, neither team really is great for strikeouts. The Boston team is a little bit, they're 5% less than average, or between 5 and 10. and then Minnesota's around average. But these lineups both are considerably above average in power and getting on base. So these are pretty tough matchups. And the price tags are not cheap. I think if I had to pick one of them, Rodriguez would be my pick because he's got the lower price tag, at least on DraftKings. Yeah, I think he's playable. I have them projected about the same. Actually, they struck out at the same percentage on the year, gone about as deep in games, so pretty comparable guys here.
All right, Adam, what are you at? Where are you at on Gibson and Rodriguez?
Yeah, I mean, I hate the spot for both of them, but if I'm going to one, I agree it's Rodriguez just because the price tag's better. He struck out about 25% of righties this year. He's held them to a 295 xWOBA, 147 expected ISO, 121 actual ISO. The problem is just that there's not a lot of strikeouts, in this lineup. Williams Astudillo is back in there, so that's another guy that's not going to strike out. There are actually 5 lefties. He's given up a lot more power to lefties than righties. Since the start of last season, but he's also struck out 31.6% of lefties over that time. So it makes it a little bit more of a boom or bust spot with how many lefties the Twins have in the lineup. But it does at least give him a little bit more upside than if it were their normal, right-handed heavy lineup full of guys that don't strike out.
Do you like any bats from either side?
CJ Cron batting second. So he got a lineup boost. He's affordable. He has over a 400 WOBA against lefties since last season. I like Cron a lot.
Alex, any bats from either side? Cron is cheap.
Yeah, I still agree with Cron. Bats on DraftKings is super underpriced, and then on FanDuel, the bottom of the lineup with Reyes, Cave, and Astudillo is about the minimum. So if you throw one of those guys in through stack, it makes it a little bit easier to fill out your lineup.
All right, let's go to this next game, which is a pretty interesting one. Daniel Ponce De Leon, Trevor Richards, and if you look batting fifth, you have Rangel Rivero. Ravello, right? Yeah, Rangel Ravello, batting fifth at $2,500 on DraftKings at the first base position. On Yahoo, Ravello is minimum salary, of course, batting fifth. And on FanDuel, where's he at on FanDuel? Anybody know? He is minimum salary.
Probably not there.
What?
I said probably not there.
Yeah, I was going to say the same, but I'm pretty sure he was just in the lineup recently, so I assume that they would make sure to get him in there. Yeah, he saw a plate appearance in the last 2 games, but he's super, super cheap. First, Adam, talk to me about Ponce De Leon, who has faced 91 righties in his major league career. He throws like 70% four-seamer. He just doesn't have any output. I don't know. I was highly underwhelmed by every bit of research I did on Ponce De Leon, and that's facing the Marlins.
Yeah, I wanted to like him more than I do.
Me too.
Almost 400 pitches against righties since last season, 16.5% strikeout percentage, was well below a strikeout per 9 against righties in the minors this season at AAA. Walk percentage is through the roof. He can have a good game because he's facing the Marlins, but it's not I'm not as enamored with the spot as I was hoping I would be. He's, I think, pretty appropriately priced. It's not like he's discounted for his inability to be a good pitcher. So I don't think I'll end up getting to a whole lot.
I kind of feel like he's overpriced when you consider some of the guys that are cheaper than him. But
yep.
Yeah, I really thought that I would like him when I'm writing the deeper dive. When I was writing the deeper dive today, I thought all right, I'll definitely recommend him unless something glaring pops up. And his ability or inability to get righties out by way of strikeout was enough for me to get a little bit concerned here. What about you, Alex?
I think the glaring thing is that last game on the 14th, he went 4 innings and gave up 1 run. And, he only pitched like 70 pitches, and getting pulled at that point in the game without giving up much production is very unusual. So I just don't think that he's going to go deep enough in the game even though the matchup is good, to really be of fantasy value tonight.
Yeah, I'm torn on how to feel about that because, like, in the minors, he repeatedly was throwing over 100 pitches, but at the very least, that tells me they're going to have a really short leash with him if he does get into any sort of trouble. And at worst, it's that they're really just trying to get this guy out of the game as quickly as possible.
Right. It might have nothing to do with whether he's stretched out or not. It's just they trying to mitigate the damage as much.
Right. They know what he is.
Right. Like, oh my God, we got 4 1-run innings. Get him out of there.
Right.
Yeah. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. All right. I mentioned Ravello. I'd love to know where you guys are at on him because I think anytime you've got a guy batting 5th at that price tag, it's at least worth considering on a team that has a relatively high what's their total at now? I don't know. Alex, you can tell us.
It's 4.9.
4.9, yeah, batting 5th. What do you think of St. Louis bats?
I think they're. It's interesting because a few guys are really, really good values on each site, and a few guys are fairly priced. On FanDuel, a couple of guys are overpriced. Ozuna at 4.2K, De Jong at 3.8K, a little bit too high. But what I'm expecting in this situation is a lot of ownership is going to be driven to these guys that are high values, like Ravello on DraftKings. And for that reason, I think that maybe you make the play of just fading him, even though he's a sick value, going with some of the higher priced guys. But definitely on DraftKings and Yahoo, a cash game lock on FanDuel. I'm not sure you need the value as much.
Yeah, makes sense. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, it's just really tough for me to get there in tournaments because of the opportunity cost at first base as well. He projects as basically a league average hitter, low strikeout percentage, reasonable walk percentage, but not a lot of power. Steamer projects a 145 ISO. He only had a 210 ISO in the PCL for the Cardinals this year at AAA, and this was also his 12th year in a row playing at AAA, or 5th. But still, that's he's seen AAA pitching for years now, and he's still not even crushing it in the PCL in terms of power. So it's just, the value is really good, but it's really easy to see how it doesn't win you a tournament, especially because it's such a glaring value with him batting 5th.
Yeah, no question. What about bats on the other side? Any interest in any Marlins bats against Ponce De Leon? Cheap.
I mean, the price tags are really nice, and Ponce De Leon has walk issues like we mentioned, but I just don't really think that you need it that much. It's not like it's a slate where you have Scherzer and Cole or something, and you can stack Miami with 2, 40-point pitchers. They also, according to the stack tool, are projected to be over-owned compared to their chances of being the highest scoring stack. So with 20 offenses on the slate, it's just kind of tough for me to, be getting to Miami at all.
Yeah, I do not disagree. Alex, are you getting to any Miami bats here?
I think on DraftKings, they're going to pop up in optimizers a lot. But that's almost as much a reason to fade him as to play him, in my opinion.
All right. 2 games to go. Before we do, I want to let you know that Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, sponsor of the Deeper Dive, offers a way for you to get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points, which are as good as cash. You can use them on the site, enter any contest you want. Just use the code AWESEMO when you sign up, AWESEMO. You get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points upon depositing, but you also get to play on a site where management fees are less, sometimes zero, where there aren't 150 lineups per person, or at least not even the opportunity to do so, 10 entry max on all of their large field tournaments, and a whole lot of benefits to playing on Yahoo, especially if you're not MMEing every night. So use the code AWESEMO when you sign up, and you get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points and just have a pretty solid overall site that isn't the ones that you've become so familiar with. All right, 2 games to go. Arizona, Colorado, Dodgers, San Francisco. Alex, what do you make of Zack Greinke here against the Colorado Rockies?
It's not a great strikeout matchup tonight, but I mean he's a guy who's having a strong season, decent strikeout numbers, so I think I might end up with him in a couple of lineups, but definitely not a core play for me.
All right, Adam, what do you think of Greinke?
I think a lot will depend on the weather in the Chicago game, because if I lose Jon Lester and all of his exposure, then I'll be getting more to Zack Greinke and Jon Gray, both in this game. But if I can go with Lester plus Scherzer, Lester plus Hill, or Lester plus Heaney or whatever in a high percentage of my lineups, it will cut down on my Greinke. Getting Colorado outside of Colorado is pretty appealing, but the roof is open tonight. It's like 100 degrees as usual in Phoenix, so not as favorable for pitchers as it would be if the roof were closed. There are 6 left-handed hitters plus the pitcher in the lineup for Colorado. That's actually plays to Greinke's strengths. His changeup's been really good this year. He's allowed basically no power on it. He struck out about 25% of lefties compared to 22% of righties, giving up no power, really giving up no production at all. So I think it's a good spot for Greinke, and I like the price tag. It's just a matter of how much pitching exposure I have to go around.
Yeah, I do like him for a couple of reasons. The Rockies outside of Coors have been like wildly underwhelming. I mean, you're talking about a team that's I think 29th in WRC plus, even bottom 10 in isolated slugging. And some of the strikeouts here, like David Dahl, this guy's striking out 32% away from Coors. Look, home road splits usually not that important, but it's been significant, not just this season, but many seasons for this Rockies team. Who else? Is Desmond? Desmond's not in the lineup, I don't think, right? No. But Trevor Story's right around 30%. Look down the rest of this. Who else? Tapia, 27%. McMahon, 31% strikeouts away from Coors Field. Like, there are some strikeouts in this lineup. There's no question about it. Sure, you're not going to get many from Desmond or from Murphy, but Zack Greinke, what fascinates me about him, Adam, is he has the second lowest walk rate among all qualified pitchers, the third lowest whip behind only Hyun-Jin Ryu and Justin Verlander. So while he doesn't have great swinging strike stuff, he also has one of the best called strike rates in the entire league. He's doing a lot to make up for not being able to miss a lot of bats. So I actually think at his price, which isn't really inflated, there is a decent. I think there's a decent shot of him producing really solid numbers and potentially going deep into this game. But you mentioning the roof being open and the heat definitely makes sense as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a really good pitcher. I think he's more talented than his price tag. It's just a matter of what, specifically Jon Lester, what pitchers are available for less, because we know that there's upside at the top as well.
All right. What about the other side, Jon Gray?
Kind of the same thing I said about Greinke, except with a little bit less confidence. The Diamondbacks do have a near 5 implied run total. The top and middle of their order, 4 lefties in the top 5 isn't great for Gray either. He's a good pitcher. He is outside of Coors, which is nice. And I think the price tag is reasonable, but not a ton of strikeouts in the Diamondbacks lineup, a low average matchup in that regard. He's only struck out 22.5% of lefties this year. So I think just, pretty mediocre spot for Gray.
Any interest in Gray, Alex?
I think, I mean, he's a contrarian play, but I don't really see it being a great matchup because of the team total, as Adam mentioned, and there aren't very easy Ks. The only guy who strikes out above average is Christian Walker, and Greinke's strikeout numbers are at the plate are pretty low, which is kind of disappointing in a National League game.
All right, and quickly, because we're running out of time. We've already run out of time. Any interest in hitters here? I don't really have much on either side.
No, not really.
All right.
Yeah, I don't have a lot.
All right, let's close it out here. And, hey, before you go, and when you go, you should check out the Live Before Lock show. It's coming up right after us. Going to take you up till 7:05 Eastern. Hit us with a thumbs up. Like the video if you enjoy the show. You want to see more of it because it helps us greatly, and we really appreciate you. Subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. Dodgers, San Francisco. Adam, Rich Hill, it is a very favorable spot, lowest total on the day, and he's averaging 100 pitches per start over his last 4. Any interest in Rich Hill here against the Giants?
Yeah, definitely. Just a really bad offense, below average strikeout percentage, but a 78 WRC plus, 286 WOBA against left-handed pitching since the start of last year. Really good spot for Hill to just be able to go out there, give you, 6 innings, strike out 6 or 7 guys, hopefully, and move on. So yeah, I definitely have interest in Hill.
All right, Alex?
Yeah, I think Hill, definitely a great play tonight. The only question is is he? I mean, he's not as good as Scherzer and kind of the same price point, so it might be harder to land up on, especially because I don't really love going double high price pitcher, but everything else is good.
And very quickly, hitters here against Drew Pomeranz.
I think it's an interesting spot where a few of the guys are showing up as really good value and a few are really bad value. And I think it'll depend on like what lineup they go with, because right now we don't have a lineup. Like Kike Hernandez is definitely on my radar. Turner, and if Garlick's in the lineup, he's super cheap at 2,300.
All right, Adam, close it out. We got to go.
Yeah, Kike and Turner are the two values that really stand out to me.
All right, that'll do it for us. Live Before Lock coming up next. Adam and I will be back with you tomorrow and Friday to close out the week. Good luck tonight. We'll catch you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive.